Hi everyone, it's Jordan again, and for today I'm going to be doing another vlog on 2 words again. Now, I did a series on that was super fun a while ago, but I really haven't done anything related to that ever since, so it's been a while. So for those of you who aren't familiar with it, I'm just going to give you a general idea and then we'll jump in, okay? So the idea behind these types of vlogs is looking at the importance of words. It's so easy to just kind of brush past the words that we use, the words that we think about and meditate on. But there's a lot of significance to the words that we say and the words that we think. They're very important. So we look at 2 words and we kind of compare and contrast them. Some, like we're going to talk about today, 2 words that are very similar, that seem to be very similar at least, and spoiler alert, we're going to hopefully find out together that they're not similar at all. Things like that, and we always try to ask at the end, what does God say? What does God want us to have? What's God calling us to have more of in these 2 words versus the other one? And that gives you a little bit of an idea. Hopefully as we keep going, you'll understand it a little bit more. So the 2 words we're going to talk about today are helpless versus hopeless. Now, these both seem to be the same, don't they? They seem to be synonyms of each other, right? If you're in a helpless situation, are you not in a hopeless situation? If you feel helpless towards something, then does that not, in essence, make it hopeless? Aren't those 2 words interchangeable? Well, hopefully what we're going to see is that they are absolutely not. That's our challenge today, is to find out how those words are actually completely different, and one of them is not even possible. So this would be the point in the vlog where I would give you the actual official definitions of both of the words, but I didn't like the official word definitions, which happens every now and then. So instead, what I do when that happens is I just kind of make up my own definitions that suit what we're talking about. So here are my definitions of these 2 words. Helpless is when there is nothing that you can do, nothing I can do, essentially just nothing that humans can do to change the situation. Okay? Hopeless is when there's nothing God can do to change the situation. For helpless to be true, it must be a situation that you can't work in, that I can't work in. Or like I say, that humans can't work in. It must be a situation that humans can't control, that humans can't bring any good out of. But for hopeless to be true, it must be something that God can't work in, something that God can't control, something that God can't bring good out of. Essentially, for hopeless to be true, there has to be no God. And we know as Christians, there is never a single moment where that is true. There's never a single moment where there's no God. That is impossible. Look at a couple biblical examples of this to hopefully drive my point in a little bit better. Do you think that Moses felt helpless when he was up against the Red Sea? Enemies on one side, a gigantic sea on the other. Do you think that was a helpless feeling for him? I do. But yet it wasn't a hopeless situation because God was still in that situation. And what happened? The sea parted. How about look at Daniel thrown into a lion's den? Is that a helpless feeling? Sure would be for me. But yet it wasn't hopeless because God was there with him in that as well. And what happened? God shut the mouths of those lions. You see where I'm going with this? Those are a couple biblical examples. I encourage you to think of other ones. Those are just the ones off the top of my head. But I also want to share my story with you because I've been reflecting a lot on my own life and my own health journey lately for a number of reasons. But the main one today being that today is the anniversary of when I got my double lung transplant. This marks 22 years since my transplant surgery. I can't even believe that I just said that. That's amazing for me to even try to grasp. But thinking about that and reflecting on my story, how many helpless moments have there been along the way? I mean, I can't even imagine for my parents watching me go through that, knowing there was nothing they could do to control or change what was going to happen. As I got older and started to realize what my reality really looked like and what my life and health limitations really were, I started to understand that feeling of helplessness as well. There are so many moments in the midst of my story where I can point to and say, that was such a helpless time. But no matter what, I have never been hopeless in those moments. We have never been hopeless in those moments. You know, honestly, even still today, I feel like there is a part of me that's always going to be helpless. There's a part of you that's always going to be helpless. And I know that's hard to hear, and I'm sorry to say it, but we can't save ourselves, right? There are so many things in this world that are out of our control. And maybe it's a little bit more front and center for me because of my health and just the vulnerability of all the different things that my health brings me, right? But honestly, aren't we all a little bit helpless to the situations that we could come across in this world? Maybe you're facing something like that right now. We might all live as humans with a level of helplessness, but we never have to live with a level of hopelessness. And honestly, I feel a little bit like a hypocrite sitting here and saying that I've never ever been hopeless, because man, there are moments that I can look back on and say that I felt really hopeless in those moments. That it seemed to me, from my point of view, to be a hopeless situation. So if you're in one of those right now, I want to tell you first that I'm sorry, and I want to tell you that I understand, and I'm not sitting here trying to condemn you for feeling a sense of hopelessness, because I have too, and it feels weird to even sit here and say that. But maybe that's why I need to work on this lesson too. Maybe that's why we all need to start looking at our lives through maybe, yes, a little level of helplessness. It's okay to admit I'm completely helpless in this situation. But never look at life through a lens of hopelessness, because your situation, your life is never hopeless. Why? Because there's never a moment where God's not in it. There's never a moment where God can't change it. One other thing I want to say, you hear me say this a lot, but I just need to make sure that I say it every time. What we hope in is so important. Sadly, we're not hoping in the fact that we're going to get that miracle turnaround. I am so blessed and grateful for the fact that I have seen countless miracles. I know God can do it, but my hope is never that it's going to happen. It's that it can happen, but it's not that it's going to, because I don't know God's plan. My hope instead is that God's plan is better than mine. My hope is that there is still a God who's so intimately involved in my life. There is a God who's still in control, who's still writing my story, who has a perfect plan, whether it looks perfect to me or not, whether I get this situation worked out the way I want it to or not. My hope is in God and who God is, and not in the circumstances or the way that I want them to turn around. I wish I could tell you that everything was gonna work out the way that you want it to, and you could hope in that, but I will never sit here and say that to you. Instead, what I want you to know is that we always have hope because we always have God. We might be helpless. He never is. And that should be the reason why we are never hopeless. God is good all the time. I love you guys.